Welcome back to another lesson with me, Mr. B. We've reached the final genre that takes us to the 21st century, post-modernism. Post-modernism, it takes place from the 1950s to the present. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at how literature is changing today and how it's evolved from what we've learned from all of these literary genres. Post-modernism pretty much gained its name from modernism because in that similar rise of modernism, it continues that drive to push boundaries of literature. By definition, and there's a couple words that I'm going to struggle to say here, postmodernism is a culture of fragmentary sensations, eclectic nostalgia, disposable simulacra, and promiscuous superficiality. Don't worry if that didn't make sense, but postmodernism values qualities of depth and coherence, meaning, originality, and authenticity are evacuated or dissolved amid the random swirl of empty signals. That was a very abstract definition, so let's try to make sense of that. Basically, postmodernism are writers of the early 20th century that took up these socially taboo topics, like we've just spoke about, sexuality and psychoanalysis, race with double consciousness, and they were inspired by other artistic media and wove high and low culture into their work. They wrestled with these profound changes and with a brutal, seemingly pointless war as we're coming out of World War I, World War II, and moving into this industrialized, urbanized 21st, or not yet the 21st century, but moving through the 20th century at this point in time. If we think about the 1950s, we have all walks of life entering this intellectual and creative space. Generations of people have begun receiving education, whether that's from the African American community or the wave of immigrants coming into the United States. And these people have been fighting for representation and equal rights. All of this leading to the type of literature we have today. Most canon postmodern works to date are from the 1950s, which leaves us with texts like the ones that you see in the back over here, like The Great Gatsby or The Catcher in the Rye. This one over here is The Crucible. This one over here is Of Mice and Men, and maybe you've read Of Grapes of Wrath, and many other considered American literature classics. These texts began to address issues around race, mental health, and beliefs in the early 20th century, but also still kind of rides on those ideas of realism and naturalism. But American literature, it's evolving. That doesn't mean that these literary movements have no relevance today in our art, media, and literature. Without them, we wouldn't have thinkers who break the barriers of something like realism or Puritanism. So the big question is, what is truly postmodern then? Though these literary movements are dated, that doesn't mean that there's no connection to the present day art. An excerpt from the reading says that literature books like now is that defined by its global audience, massive production, and transnational use of English. It reminds us that language itself is a living thing, that it's also an artistic medium that changes in the very hands of the writers and speakers who use it. Thanks to today's art and technology, literary genres have evolved and changed. They've moved beyond single philosophers, like say in the Enlightenment, and it's influenced our music, our movies, our lives, and people. And now we have artists who can take these ideas and expand on them and create spaces and representation for everybody, whether that's through music or through film or through animation even. So this gets us thinking about, what does all of this writing sparked by the rise of the internet and media and technology tell us about literature today? It tells us that American literature is evolving, and by understanding how these movements are relevant in today's art and literature is important to understanding that American literature should reflect our stories and not just one generation or one group of people. That being said, if you haven't already, make sure to read the last excerpt in this about postmodernism on page 28 to 30 and respond to the following questions. What is truly postmodern literature? And what does all this writing sparked by the rise of the internet tell us about literature today? All right, see you in the next one. Peace.